Thank you to everyone who has joined us today for this really important topic, and a big thank you to all our speakers and our moderator. To begin, I would request the President, Institute of Regional Studies, to give his introductory remarks.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone. It's such a pleasure that all of you can be here on this very important subject and topic. The role of women is extremely important. It is sad to see that despite over 3 decades, there is an ongoing conflict in Afghanistan, which not only affects the country, its people, its women, but it affects the entire neighborhood. And it is essential that this conflict must be resolved as soon as possible for the betterment of the people living there, for the education of the children, for the future of the people of Afghanistan. Women are important. They are now a part of the negotiating process, and we have a distinguished panel of speakers with us today who are going to take us forward on what this role can be and how Afghanistan can be a place where there can be peace in future, which will be better for the entire neighborhood. Thank you very much, Zunaira. And I would now request the proceedings to start. And we really look forward to a very engaging session with the distinguished panel this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Nadeem Raz. For our, hello, sorry, I think I was stuck. Our moderator today is Benazir Jatoi, who is a barrister. Her work focuses on women and minority rights. She is a regular contributor to op-ed pages in various Pakistani newspapers. She works on human rights, advocacy, and legislation, and emphasizes the importance of having a multidisciplinary approach to law. I would request her to take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you to the Institute of Regional Studies for having me as a moderator, but having such an important topic such as the role of women in peace building. We know the example of Yemen, Rwanda, other conflicts, of course, Afghanistan, both in terms of when women are included in the process of peace building and negotiations, and when they're not included. So even terms like gender neutral, we all know that by its very definition, they are discriminatory. And I really look forward to listening and learning from the panelists that we have today. So I won't speak further. I'll introduce my first panelist. I just like to point out that I would request each panelist to please speak for 10 minutes, because we would like to have a question and answer session towards the end to allow more engagement with the audience for comments and question and answers. So please hold your questions and answers for our panelists for after they've spoken. And without further ado, the first panelist is Dr. HABIBA SARABI. I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. I'll just read a quick introduction. I'll pass the mic on to her, and then she can speak, and then I will come sum it up and move on to the next panelist. So Dr. HABIBA SARABI studied pharmacy at Kabul University. She's a politician and worked as a reformer in Afghanistan during the post-Taliban era. During the Taliban tenure, Dr. SARABI worked as a women's rights activist and education activist, training girls and immigrant women in Pakistani camps. She was Minister of Women's Affairs from 2002 to 2004, and in 2005, she was appointed as the first female governor of Bamyan province, excuse me. Dr. SARABI joined Zalmay Rasool's electoral team as his deputy in 2014 and was the most prominent woman activist in this election round. After the formation of the National Unity Government, Dr. SARABI worked as an advisor on women and youth affairs with Dr. Abdullah, Chief Executive Officer of the National Unity Government. And then in 2016, she was appointed as Deputy Chairperson of the High Peace Council. Dr. Saiba received a prestigious award titled Prestigious Ramon Magsaysay, sorry, excuse my pronunciation, in 2013 for her work in good governance and girls' education. She also received the End Peace Award in 2016 for her tireless work to bring peace to Afghanistan and its focus on gender equality and women's empowerment. Dr. Saiba is currently a member of the negotiating team of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Thank you so much for joining us, and I pass the floor over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, Benazir Jan. Salam to you and to all the other panelists and the audience that listening to us. Thank you very much, Benazir, and thank you very much, Zonaida, for making this opportunity to talk about women engagement in the peace process, women in the peace process, and this very, very critical moment. And so I want to talk a little bit about the women or the inclusion generally in the peace process, a little bit about the inclusion. So first of all, let me to talk about the whole inclusion dynamic. Afghanistan is a country that with different ethnic group, and this variety of the ethnic group is the beauty of Afghanistan. We have from Pashtun to Tajik, Hazara, Uzbek, Baluch, the different type of different ethnic group in our country. So this is one issue that, or this is very important issue that the different people of Afghanistan should see her or herself at the peace process. So that's why the team or the delegation that was selected, it shows all the ethnicity of Afghanistan. But the other important point is the inclusion of women. So we are 4 women, including Madam GAILANI, that she's with me today. And with the other 2 sisters, we are 4 out of 21 members of delegation. So the number, of course, the number is not comparing to the men. We are not equal, but we are on at least 30% of the 26% of this in different part of the decision making, from peace up to the logistic, a legal part. And so when we are in the negotiation team, we are not only talking about the women issue. Of course, women issue and women's rights is a very important topic, but we have to be in different decision-making part of this discussion. So because women is the completing the whole system and the whole policy. So this is very important that women be in different position, that there will be discussion about the policy. So without inclusion of women, peace process will not be a sustainable and meaningful peace. So every man and woman in the country should see herself or himself to the peace process. The time that we had peace in the country and everybody was happy with that, so there were a lot of opportunity for women. So this opportunity came from our constitution. Constitution is playing a big role in the presence of women in every part of the society and decision making. So for example, I, as a first female governor in Bamyan province, I served for the people more than 8.5 years. So of course, Bamyan was one of the very secure province. But when I resigned from that position, we kept this, I kept that province as a safe and secure province. There were so many other provinces, but the security was not the same as Bamyan. So it means that if there will be peace, if there will be security, so there will be more chance for women to be engaged and to be involved. It is very important that women should be engaged and involved in different areas. So the other part that I want to talk a little bit about that is the ceasefire. Unfortunately, nowadays, of course, one is the issue of war that is spreading every part of the country. But the other important issue that I want to touch upon is the target killing. Nowadays, all the civil society, especially journalists, women activists, they are getting targeted by Taliban because the Taliban want to shut down them and they cannot talk about their rights. So the ceasefire is very important to at least for this during the negotiation. If there will be no ceasefire, the negotiation will not go in a, trustable process. So that's why ceasefire. And from the other side, when there is target killing, of course, sometimes the Taliban is claiming that they are not the one that doing this. If there will be ceasefire, of course, this claim is also will be reduced from Taliban. So especially during Ramadan and during the Eid, the people, especially women, want ceasefire. But if Taliban claim that they are a part of the people, so they have to respect the people wish and the people demand. Before I touch upon to the Constitution is very important for the life of Afghan women. Today, all the achievement, I'm sure that my friend and my sister, Madam GAILANI, will touch upon to that. Today, all the achievement and gain that we have it is because of the Constitution. And the Constitution on the Article 22, it's written that men and women, they have the equal right according to the law. So, but we are not very, we do have our concern for the changing the Constitution, and the rights of women cannot be granted for the future. So in this case, we want the support of our sisterhood from the regional country, especially Pakistan. Pakistan, it's very, very necessary that we have to keep contact and to build upon, to network with our Pakistani sisters, because this extremist is now, if we are suffering from extremism, so I'm sure that tomorrow our Pakistani friends and our Pakistani sister also will suffer from extremism. So if we can put hands together and to make a very, very strong network, of course, we will be able to defend ourselves and to struggle and fight against terrorism and extremism. I will stop here. Thank you very much for making this opportunity.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very good framework you've actually provided, particularly touching upon the importance and the necessity of having all ethnic groups on the table. I think for Pakistan being as diverse as is Afghanistan, this is something also that we look towards, or rights activists and those that work in the field look to always have inclusion of everyone at the table at the right time, at the right place, including women, obviously. Also, I'm glad that you talked about sustainable peace, because I think we often forget the aspect of sustainability when we talk about peace or women's rights. And also highlighting some of the complexities around negotiation linked to ceasefire, which I think are absolutely necessary, but also very complex areas. But I think the one that maybe perhaps because I have a legal background where you've kind of really touched my kind of sensibilities has been the importance of the Constitution in the lives of women, the importance of the Constitution in the lives of minorities, because Pakistan has the same need and the same women's rights activists have the same understanding of the Constitution. We hold the Constitution as our main anchor to go forward. And you quote Article 22, we quote Article 25 as an article of equality between the sexes in Pakistan. So me as a sister, as symbolically, are all camaraderies with you, and let's take this forward to make sure that we can support Afghanistan in this process further. And I've said my bit, which perhaps I've taken a bit too much time, and I'd like to go on to the next speaker, please. It's Ms. Fatima GAILANI. Ms. Fatima GAILANI is the leader of the National Islamic Front of Afghanistan, who fought against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s. Sorry, is the daughter of Pir Said Ahmed GAILANI, the leader of the National Islamic Front of Afghanistan, who fought against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s. She has completed her secondary education at Malale School in 1971. Ms. GAILANI completed her bachelor's and master's degrees at the National University of Iran. She also holds a master's degree in Islamic Studies and Jurisprudence from the Muslim College in London. Ms. GAILANI has been the spokesperson for the National Islamic Front of Afghanistan Party in the West for 12 years and has served on the Sharia board of the Islamic College of London for 2 years. She is also a member of the Rome Conference, the Emergency Lage and the Constitutional Loya Jirga, and was the commissioner of the Constitutional Review Committee. From 2005 to 2016, she was the president of the Afghan Red Crescent Society. At the same time, Ms. GAILANI was the chair of the Compliance and Mediation Board of the Red Cross and the Federation of Red Crescent. And in 2017, she was the chair of the Red Cross Conference. She also represented the Red Cross and the Federation of the Red Crescent Society in the same year in the humanitarian aid sector for the entire Gulf Basin in Dubai. Ms. GAILANI is also the author of the books Muhammad Musa Shafiq and Mosques of London. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. GAILANI, taking out the time. I'll hand the floor over to you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to my sisters and the president of IRS and Zumaira John and Benazir John. It is very nice to be with you, and this is extremely refreshing for both of us. That for the first time we were asked to be in a panel with our Muslim sisters from a neighboring Muslim country. This was something which was lacking very much for us, because we have been very busy and very lucky to have the support of most European activists, members of parliament, people, women in the government. So we constantly had their support for the last 6 or 7 months. And this was lacking, and I'm glad that today this contact has been formed. And this is very important for us, and I'm sure it is extremely important for audience to see a sisterly connection has been made. Peace is a necessity for Afghanistan. In most countries, you don't even think about it because it is something that you have taken it for granted, because it has to be peace. And this is normal to have peace. Indeed, it is, but not in my country. In my country, for the last 43 years, it has been war. And we don't want to get used to war. We don't want to think that this is our faith. And this is the best opportunity for us to find a way to find peace. What peace means for Afghan people? It means lots of things. It means education, it means health, it means living together, it means sending your children to school and not expect them to be dead. This is peace for the people of Afghanistan. And as my sister, Dr. HABIBA SARABI said, it's a country from many ethnic groups, many colors exist in Afghanistan. which makes the beautiful mosaic of Afghanistan. So inclusion is also what peace means to us. Why peace is important in Afghanistan is not just for Afghanistan. If we achieve peace, this is peace for region, and this will be peace for the world. We remember very well, nearly 20 years ago, that what happened in New York. So if we have peace in Afghanistan, the rest of the world could be safe. We must not allow Afghanistan to be the haven for bad doers. I come from a generation who was born and brought up and even became mother during the peace. I remember our comfortable life. Yes, Afghanistan was not a wealthy country, but Afghanistan was a comfortable country. Afghanistan was a country that was a haven for tourists, to people come and see it. I grew up in a family, and I grew up in a time that I had taken for granted that women with achievement, women with education could be somebody. But we saw what war did. Although that in 1964, when men and women got a right to vote together, and women were elected in the parliament, women became ministers or ambassadors, it had nothing to do with the Western countries or something coming from outside. It was a homegrown something. But what happened? We lost it. We lost it at a war which didn't belong to us. It was other people's war that we got entangled with it. The role of women is extremely important in peacemaking, but the presence of youth is equally important. And the presence of a minority is even more important. None of this could be left alone. None should be left behind. I remember I was in the Bonn conference. Only the lack of presence of Taliban brought us to war until today. We didn't enjoy, although it was great changes for the last 20 years, but we couldn't enjoy it entirely because one link was missing. But today in Afghanistan, we have many links that they should not be missed. It is indeed the women, but so equally they are youth and minority. As Dr. SARABI said, the Constitution is an anchor for us, as Benazir, you said very rightly. Yes, there were shortcomings in implementing the Constitution, but at least we had peace of mind that in this Constitution, men and women in Afghanistan, every single person in Afghanistan are equal. So it is important that we safeguard that. We cannot do it alone. We need help from our sisters from all over the world, and importantly, from our sisters in the Islamic countries. Women did play a very important role in peacemaking in the history in Afghanistan. In a traditional country with tribes, women usually played a very important role in peacemaking within the tribes, peacemaking between the other tribes, and eventually they gained names that they became peacemakers, and they were lended to other places to make peace. Today, in a modern Afghanistan, women play a very important role. But alas, also our tradition, because of the war, most of things in our tradition has been broken, like many things. Trees were cut in the war, water was stopped, and so these positive tradition ways have stopped. But the negative tradition, they never stop, because negative things, they always find their way to go on. That's why it is important to have women in every aspect of this peacemaking. If it is a political decision, even if it is a military decision, or peace, or ceasefire, women can play a role. Never in the history of Afghanistan, I have repeated this many, many times, and I want to repeat it again. Even in the peacetime, we didn't have so many incredible, educated, dedicated women and youth that we have today. They cannot be ignored. They should not be ignored. And this is the only right way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was actually so interesting to hear, because you reminisced about the past, about how it was when you were you became a mother, what peace looked like at one time. But unfortunately, for the past 43 years, what war looks like, and the necessity of peace, and how perhaps some of us globally may take it for granted, something that you're struggling for and needing. And defining peace, I think, has been interesting. And I quoted this because I found it quite empowering, your words, to say inclusion is peace, education, health, sending your children to school without them coming back in body bags is all part of peace. And positive traditions, actually, water, trees, is also part of peace. It's also part of the comfortable Afghanistan that you talk about, or you remember it to be. So I think you've given us quite a hopeful picture that even after 43 years of such a bleak presence in the neighborhood, hope is always possible, always there. And I think perhaps a necessity without which we can't go further. And thank you again for also emphasizing the importance of minorities. I think often in our region, and this is a problem in Pakistan also, we forget that importance, even though our constitutions guarantee it. Our institutions, our foresight doesn't see the importance of inclusion of all people, of all colors, of all ethnic backgrounds. So thank you very much for that. I would just like to say that before I move on to my next speaker, if anyone has any questions, please start writing them down now, raising your hands so I can ask you to speak. And what I would like to just request is that anyone that has a question or a comment, please be as precise as possible, so that we can actually have more of an engaging dialogue, especially as we want our distinguished speakers to be able to reply to what you've asked, so we learn more from them. So I'll move on to my next speaker. Sorry, I'm not looking at the screen because I'm looking at another screen to read out the bio. Ms. Palwasha Hassan. Ms. Palwasha Hassan is a mobilizer who fought for the rights of women to be enshrined in Afghanistan's 2004 constitution. She's a member of Civil Society Advisory Board to the State Ministry of Peace, and two-time elected chairperson of Afghan NGO's coordinating body. She is currently the executive director of the Afghan Women's Educational Center. Ms. Hassan is peace and women's rights activist since her early youth. She volunteered as pioneer of independent women's rights movement since 1995. She's founding member of Afghan W. Ms. Hassan has authored several positions and advocacy papers for Kabul, London, and many other conferences on Afghanistan Women's Network. Ms. Hassan, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, and salam alaikum to everyone. And so glad to see also our dear friend and leaders from Doha, Ms. FATIMA GAILANI, and also Dr. SARABI. Salam alaikum. I think they said it all, and so inspiring to hear from them always. I coming from a civil society background, so I will speak from informal peace because you already have the view of two very respected ladies on the formal process and what the women of Afghanistan holds in their vision for peace, which is very much broader than definition of end of conflict. It is more like inclusivity, it's education, it's work for women, it's respect for minorities, and inclusion of everyone in the future of the country. I think this vision distinct what women of Afghanistan are doing maybe from many other struggles around the world. And in a very difficult circumstances that it's holding us. As Ms. GAILANI was saying, it's over 43 years now. A generation of us are brought up in this time, or maybe some of us were very young when conflicts started in Afghanistan. So we have no memory of peace, actually. Despite of that, I think what women of Afghanistan has been doing all these years was growing the seeds of peace. And that's important because we should never wait for the formal process. While Afghanistan was a battlefield for superpowers, and Afghan men were leading all those groups for fighting the Soviets, and afterwards with all the different terrorist groups, Afghan women has been investing a lot in the health of the communities, in education for our young. And some of the examples are just very unique in the world. Like, for instance, those of who participated in today's meeting, and they know of what Taliban regime looked like. Women were totally banned from public scene. Girls were not allowed to go to school. And it was in that time that young girls in Afghanistan had no right to education, had no right even access to a health facility, because women were not allowed to be there. So in that case, many women inside Afghanistan started underground schools. And I think that is very unique example of what women can do and struggle for peace in a very wider perspective or definition. Some 25 years back, a group of us has started as a very young woman, a movement for peace and education and human rights of women. And that movement is now a very strong platform called Afghan Women Network. And through this network, we have organized and struggled for the last 15 years to ensure that our women and our representative are there in the formal process, besides what our struggle is there in the local level, also in the informal sector. And we are proud that today we are seeing the success of what we have struggled for. Women are part of all the formal structure for peace. We have women in High Peace Council or Reconciliation Council, which is called now. Also, we have 4 women, 2 of the respected ladies are here with us today. And we have 2 more strong women as a part of the negotiation team. And this is very good, where Taliban team unfortunately has no women for very known reason, and the way the identity of the group is constructed. We think it's important for women to be involved in different level of the peace process. We cannot limit peace only to the negotiation table. While that's very much important, it's also very much important that women continually monitor the peace process. And that's what we are doing in the informal sector. We are watching and we are seeing where the troubles is. And that's how we are supporting those who are inside or on the table. Unfortunately, the way the peace talks are going on, it seems like Taliban are not very willing to continue or maybe very serious about peace. And we are still receiving a very high level of threats to women inside Afghanistan, to journalists, to all those educated class who are trying to make a difference in a country which has been ruined by conflict for over 40 years. Just today, in a few minutes before, I received a picture of a very young man, a journalist who has been killed in one of the northern provinces. And that is the way terror and fear is still spread up. The withdrawal of US troops has concerned us a lot. But I think the plan which the president of Afghanistan has put together for peace and the way he delivered his speech and his thoughts with women. Just yesterday, we had a meeting with the president, as we have with other leaders here in Afghanistan, to build that consensus among Afghan political leaders to be a united front for preserving the rights of people of Afghanistan in peace negotiation, because we think that's very much important. If we do lose in the peace agreement, I think it will be difficult to achieve it later. For that reason, all powers to our sisters who are sitting there, and we're there fighting for them in different fronts, the way we did before. And I think what is coming, as the Afghan president was saying, that the withdrawal of international forces initially has been very tough for us, because that we think the Afghan war is not just like a civil war. It is also have a lot of regional dynamics. And I think this discussion, as before both speakers talked about it, that the regional aspect of the peace building is as much important as much the regional dimension of the conflict is. The connection with Pakistani civil society and even politician, it's very much important for us to understand, because we are in the same region. And if anything happened in Afghanistan, if we have a conservative group coming in power and extremism flourishes in the whole region. I remember when I was growing up in Pakistan, I've been hearing from Pakistani women activists who are saying that with Afghan war, we have a flourishing culture of Kalashnikov in Pakistan. But I think if we have another extremist regime inside Afghanistan, that will have as much adverse impact on politics in Pakistan as it will constrain us. So it is time for us to be united, to be realistic, and avoid that nationalistic approach to things, which is different. Because I think in a very big level, we share same values with progressive Pakistani society, as much we probably don't share the same value with an Afghan conservative or extremist group as you do in your country. So it's important that we unite where our value lies. And I'm looking forward to this discussion and sort of dialogue from this platform. And also myself, I'm working on a series of dialogues through Afghan Women Network and my organization, AWEC, to connect with more and more Pakistani society, but also other countries in the region, which is Central Asian, Iranian, and maybe if we found the contact through China, we have to bring a different connection and networking among those who believes on equal rights, among those who believes that nobody is less than other, and we deserve all equal rights to education, to health, to democracy, to voting. I think there we can unite and be more stronger than all those extremist groups who are threatening our security, our safety, and our peace every day. So I stop here, and I will be happy to participate in question and answer later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. I think we ended with our panelists on a perfect note of real vigor and hope and a plea that progressive forces must come together. In a way, we have no choice. We should come together because our countries, our future and past are tied together, and an extremist regime, whether in Pakistan or Afghanistan, will affect both countries. And we've seen in Pakistan, perhaps not in the same way as Afghanistan, that extremist elements do impact women's rights, do impact minority rights, do impact democracy, and other constitutional guarantees like health, education, the right to dignity, justice. And also, I think the emphasis on the fact that you mentioned that peace cannot be limited is necessary and absolutely necessary at the negotiation table, but also that women must monitor peace. And peace is a process, and how women need to be part of that as well. So it's imperative that they be there on the negotiating table, but also they're there throughout every other process as well. Thank you for letting us know about the kind of work that women have been doing in Afghanistan. So planting seeds of peace, like you already said, such as in health and underground schools. And interestingly, in Yemen, this has been the same thing. So if you look at examples of Yemen, women have created services, whether secret or otherwise, structures for education and health, where the state has failed to have them, or because of war, they're unable to have them because of the resources. And it's been the women that have come forward. So that's something very much, I think, common globally, that women come to the forefront when absolutely necessary. So thank you for highlighting that. And I think another issue that hasn't come up, but also evidence or research shows that violence increases during times of conflict and war, both domestic violence, but violence, of course, otherwise, because there's war. But I think it becomes part of the culture, becomes part of the structure, and comes home as well. So I'm sure there are women in Afghanistan that also challenge that, look at that, sit with communities, because we know traditionally women are peacemakers from the home. In a way, it's kind of part of the nurture of how women go forward. Thank you. I would like to start with some questions. I think there are already some questions on chat. I'd like to read them out. Out of the three panelists, whoever would like to answer, feel free. So I'll start. The first question is from Imran Sardar. He's a research analyst at the Institute of Regional Studies. Since Afghanistan is a difficult country and subject of women, and the women's empowerment subject is even more difficult, I'd like to appreciate your efforts, the panelists, for all the work that you do. The question is regarding the nexus between the rural and urban Afghan women. There has been a criticism that women empowerment is just concern of women in urban Afghanistan, and the rural women have nothing to do with this. Is this the case? How many rural Afghan women are aware of their rights? How well is it a coordinated effort? I think this kind of question could also go to a Pakistani panelist, and they would probably have the same answers as someone from Afghanistan. But please feel free, whoever wants to answer that.
This is a very important question, and I myself, even before the wars, like any other country, there is a big difference between big cities and the rural. The further you go, the lesser education, less women are aware of their rights. And so education plays a fantastic role. And the good thing is that here in Doha, when we, both of us and four of us, we were in touch with women in the remotest areas of Afghanistan with youth and civil society, and through Palwasha Hassan said earlier about the women's Afghan Women Network, and also the Ministry of Peace. They put us in touch with women in such an areas that you wouldn't have thought that women would be able to know about their own right, let alone about the constitution or about peacemaking and all that. They surprised us tremendously. We usually take for granted that women in the cities are more aware. Maybe in number, it is true, like any other country. Even if you go to America, a person in New York and Washington, it cannot be comparison to women in Arkansas or somewhere. So it is true for Afghanistan also. So it is really the education which makes a difference. But now the importance of education was felt in Afghanistan for the last 20 years, and there is a big change. So the questions which came from the remotest areas, was really very important. I remember, and I quoted this several times, but it is so interesting that I should quote it again. A young woman from the northeastern Afghanistan told me that, listen to me carefully, what I mean by peace. For me, peace is not just lack of war. Peace is when I can go to school, when I can be able to see my future working and be able to be equal to my brothers. And this is the way that women, even in the remotest areas, are. But of course, if we think about the quantity of the number, of course, it is not the same.
If I may, to add things that my sister, Madam GAILANI said, that the role of education and peace. So this is very important. Of course, education is very important for women who are in the rural area or urban area. But why the women that they are in the rural area cannot get education? Because of insecurity and safety. So when they are getting threatened from Taliban that female teacher cannot go to the school and teach, so how the children and young girls could go to school and get education? So this is a big gap for education in the rural area. But anyone, because any of women, they want peace. I have some my own experience because on 2019 we for the national consensus, women consensus of peace process, we have been traveling in different provinces. I have been at least for 5 and 6 provinces with some other women. So I have been to the north part of Afghanistan and also to the central part, which is Ghazni, is very complicated area according to security. But of course, all women want peace, and peace doesn't mean the lack of, as Madam GAILANI said, it's not the lack of firing and the lack of war, but education, health center, health care, and all the services that citizens need. This is something that all women across Afghanistan wants to have.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. I would like to move on to my next question, which is from Shahid Ilyas. The question is, Afghanistan has come a long way over the past 20 years. It has achieved a lot on all sectors, including women's empowerment, institution building, the security sector, education, health, and so on. But the Taliban, unfortunately, offer a clear choice between war and a complete handover of Afghanistan to them. Can we really be hopeful about a third option, an option in which there is peace and the achievements made so far are safeguarded without the revival of Taliban's Islamic Emirate?
Palwasha Hassan.
I don't know. I would like Palwasha Hassan also to add something in this. That's why we are in negotiations. It is not a surrendering one side to the other. Negotiation means a lot. Negotiation means that to safeguard your values, to talk about values, convincing about your values. Mm-hmm. And I would like to share something during the Constitution, that we should not think that only the Taliban have those rigid ways of thinking about Islam, or their own way of Islam, or only one way of Islam. When we were writing the Constitution or consulting people all over Afghanistan, we also received a huge group of women activists, civil society activists, but we also received very important religious figures, and also imams and ulama. And I assure you that majority of people who came to meet us, they were not different from what we hear from our Taliban. But it was, even at that time, negotiations, talking, and having very prominent Afghan, but they were internationally recognized Afghan, like Dr. Hashim Kamali, who spoke to them and showed that what we are going to put in the constitution that now we have in the constitution has nothing against Islam. The Afghan constitution is not a secular constitution. It is an Islamic constitution. And within this Islamic constitution, the rights of minority, the rights of Shia and Sunni, the rights of man and woman, all is kept and intactly under an Islamic, values. So maybe, I hope so, that we will come to an understanding. Probably we will lose some. This is the nature of negotiations, but I really hope not more. Palwasha John, you have anything?
No, you said it very well. I think a negotiation is important, and that's why we have the peace. I think one thing which is important, that Taliban has been operating more like a military or militant group, and it's important for them, if they are dreaming of returning to power, to think about politics. I think from Mujahideen time, there is a lot of lesson learned, and it is important for Taliban to learn lessons from that, and to embrace the changes in Afghanistan. Not that it was totally because of the Western coming to Afghanistan. Let's remember this: Afghanistan is the second country after UK to approve of women voting rights. 100 years back, Afghanistan, the first Nizamnama, which was in King Abdurrahman Khan's time, like a real founder of the country, he started with his Nizamnama and pro-women's rights, which was giving protection to women from the forced marriage. And those things have started very earlier on in Afghanistan. So in last 20 years, we actually had the chance to revive a lot of those rights. And we also went to a level to bring sort of moderation between a very extreme, let's say, a westernized urban class that we had in Afghanistan versus a very backward rural class. I think for the years of conflict teach us a lot of lesson, that there be more sort of moderation between the two classes. And we are today all, for instance, wearing scarf and all that, because we want to bring that closeness between the two, very one extreme or other. And we hope that Taliban also have the chance to change themselves, to be thinking, even if they come by force to take over the power, they still have to run the government, and they cannot go to the same level of isolation as they were in the past, because they had no money to run the country. Afghanistan economy, they don't have even the skills to run the country. So it's important for them to work with everybody else to run that country. And I think women of Afghanistan are the best partner in the reconstruction and development. So that is one side of the story. The other side is, it's important because a lot of things has been out of closet since since the peace process has started. For instance, we now know where the addresses of the Taliban headquarters is. Taliban are coming from Doha and going to, let's say, Quetta, to Peshawar, to Karachi, to Islamabad even. So here, I think the regional dimension is very much important. We need the push and force of the progressive Pakistani society to make sure that Taliban don't get that military support anymore, because here is the time of peace. And everyday killing of Afghan, we will probably lose a lot of our young generation. We will lose more people in Afghanistan. But I think we'll also be losing our friendship, our relation with our neighbor, because these grievances can grow much deeper. I think this is a unique chance for all unnecessary issues that we had with Pakistan in the past. And this is, as President of Afghanistan was saying, this is a unique chance for us to build back. I think here contacts and dialogue like this should help us to think more like who is dragging us to this sort of conflict. We all has to, as I will just reiterate my previous word, that we have so much in common and shared, as much it is maybe among the extremists and military powers. Here we are people, and we hold to different things, and that is human rights. And let's keep to that, and I think we will change anybody who are fighting and killing people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think you've made a very valid and candid point about the importance of no military interference or support of the Taliban from across the border. I think a lot of civil society and progressive voices in Pakistan feel the same way. So I'm glad that you've reiterated our demand as well. And I think that re-emphasizing, I think as all panelists seem to say, that Taliban will be bad for everyone. And a populist or an extremist form of governance in any form, whether it's Modi in India as we see now, or we saw Taliban in Afghanistan, or we've seen military dictatorships in Pakistan that have been as extreme, anti-women and anti-minority rights, without being under the guise of a religious leadership. I'd like to move the next question to a friend from India, actually. And Bhavni is asking, it is going to be a long road of rebuilding once the international troops withdraw. What three things do each of you feel should be, three things you feel should be the priority and should be done to ensure the peace process does not get derailed? How can women in neighboring countries help?
The peace process needs consensus on the region. First of all, national consensus and regional consensus. The regional consensus even very important for the peace process, during the peace process, and post peace agreement. So if all the country around Afghanistan or neighboring country can put hands together and work for the peace, and for the post-peace agreement, for the development also, there will be effort for rebuilding Afghanistan. It's very important that they can put hands together. And as before, Palwasha John said, Taliban also should know that they cannot, if they want to work or govern inside Afghanistan, they cannot do it alone. They have to be, there should be a kind of coalition with the different people or different group or the government of Afghanistan. Otherwise, they will be isolated again, or there will be no development aid for Afghanistan. So they will be isolated and cannot do anything for Afghan people. So it's better to work together and also to work with the regional country, with our neighboring country, for the rebuilding Afghanistan after the post-peace agreement.
One other thing I want to add, one of the things that Afghanistan is suffering very much and has been suffering for quite some time now is corruption. And as much as I want all the countries that they had their soldiers in Afghanistan and they are leaving, that they should feel a responsibility towards Afghanistan, that in rebuilding after the peace. And I would like very much for them to attach any measures possible to their aid for equality in Afghanistan, for anti-corruption, and also human rights and women's rights. This is very important. Afghanistan, unfortunately, will be needing help for some time in the future, and all those countries that they are going to help. Afghanistan war was not a war of the Afghans. It was an imposed war of the Cold War, starting in the Cold War, and just it continued. So that's why I think the time has come that those small rivalries or big rivalries should end and let Afghanistan to breathe again. and the rebuilding of Afghanistan should be attached with all these values.
Palwasha Jan, now I've started using your terminology because Miss doesn't sound as nice as saying John with it. So now, Palwasha Jan, would you like to add something?
I think I'm fine, and I agree with the answers already given. Maybe I attempt the next question.
Okay, yeah, because there are many questions and I'm not sure that we can go through them within the time frame. If I can just sum up some of the things that I think a lot of people are asking is about the withdrawal of the troops, of the international troops. You know, were women's rights emphasized while the troops were there, or while has the US ignored the role of women in peace negotiations or in the process? And the withdrawal, what will it mean? What are the challenges you foresee? How you plan to deal with such challenges, is kind of summing up a lot of what has been said on the side here. So if anyone would like to talk about the withdrawal of the troops, and kind of what challenges it has posed and will pose once that vacuum is created, if you consider it a vacuum.
Okay, maybe I can attempt to that, so that I think a lot of people associate a woman's right with maybe sort of international intervention, especially with their troop presence. And I would say maybe to a certain level, yes, because we had better security to flourish back, a lot of rights, as I said before, to gain those things which Afghanistan had maybe in early decades during these last 2 decades. And we had that gap of Taliban time and the civil war, which we lost much in that time. The US troops were only like about less than 3,000, which is leaving Afghanistan, and the process has already started from 1st May. I think security-wise, they were not even involved in protecting day-to-day life in Afghanistan. But I think leverage-wise, it was a very bad move in a wrong time. Because Afghanistan were just about in a peace negotiation time. And this gave like a moral support to Taliban, perceiving as if they are the winner in this time. They could have waited, the US could have waited till the end of the year and let Taliban had to give importance and that what negotiation means and why it's important for them to speak to our delegation. So we lost one chance of Turkey meeting Turkey conference, which was supposed to happen in Turkey earlier last month. And so on. Right now, that kind of the symmetry doesn't exist now in the negotiation. Like one side feel like they're the winner, and the other side feel like they have to give away things because there is a lot of pressure of killing innocent civilian. And this is such a shame because both culturally, it's not an appropriate way, like killing children, women. These things never happened in our war history, which is happening right now. And I think the disadvantage of the government is that they are there to protect the civilian, and Taliban doesn't care anymore. The least statement that they're giving, they say, okay, somebody has died. But you know, this is not a proper thing which has happened because of the very hasty withdrawal of US troops, and very sudden as well. Although the Afghan government says, okay, this is our responsibility, we'll take care. But I think the way the US has came to Afghanistan and the way they left, just like saving face, that has really imbalanced the equation, and it has bad implication on the peace process. Unfortunately, although the US president and the Afghan president is talking about that there are other ways, maybe through economic support and development support, blah, blah, but I think they already did a bad job by leaving this way. So the implication we are seeing, the continuation of the war and all that, but I think it's also time for the region to be more proactive. And I think previously it was asked what the women can do in this region. And it's important we have a very active civil society in South Asia, whether it's India, it's Pakistan, or other South Asian countries. And we also have a lot of common issues, which is domestic violence and so many other bad practices. And somehow Taliban and those groups are so much associated with the politics of institutionalizing that kind of violences. It is time for us to get united. It is time for us to push our governments. And it is time for us to make a stronghold that we do not let this militancy to occupy our mind and our territory the way that it will affect all of us. So I stop here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Would the other two panelists like to go, or should I go on to the next question? Okay, I'll go on to the next question, which is from Nabila Jaffer, who works in this area and has done extensive research in this area on Afghan women and Afghanistan and certain provinces in the south. So what she's written is, I'm particularly concerned about the women of the southernmost provinces, which are predominantly controlled by Taliban. It means the women of those regions do not have access to the rights guaranteed in the constitution and also other development facilities. As the other ethnic groups are relatively flexible and liberal towards women, but Taliban, especially in the Pashtun ethnic group, are subject to conservative customs, traditions, and the Taliban's version of Sharia. What would be the future of these women already under Taliban rule, even after the agreement, or there's an agreement of power sharing, once it takes place? What does the future of these women in southern provinces look like?
This is nothing new. Unfortunately, even during the peace, those areas, they were benefiting from changes and education very little. Today, it is not just for women. Even the men, the young men in those areas, they don't have proper access to education, and it is entirely because of the lack of security, because those schools cannot survive. And this is the saddest thing. And for me, it is shocking that a movement comes in the name of Islam and would forget so quickly that Iqra and Ilm al-Qalam and the first order of God should be so quickly forgotten. For me, it is a shock to see one illiterate person in the Muslim world, because this is indeed the first order of God. But the actual problem of this is the struggle between Islam and tradition. Unfortunately, in those areas, in many areas in Afghanistan, the tradition has been implemented in the name of Islam, and because of illiteracy, it has made such a strong vicious circle. Illiteracy causes not knowing causes illiteracy, and at the end, what wins is the wrong traditions of Afghanistan or that region which is in conflict with Islam. Forget about, I'm not even talking about the rest of the world, even in Islam, like inheritance. A woman in those areas will be ashamed even to ask for their inheritance. A woman will be ashamed to see a mahar as her own property. This will be like a price on this woman, and this will go to the pocket of father or brothers. So these are the things which existed before, and it will exist as long as we don't have security in those areas. If we don't have security, we will not have education. If we will not have education, this will be the result. And as Dr. SARABI earlier said, that if we don't have security, how could we have education? And that was the difference between the rural and the urban areas in Afghanistan. And now it is the difference between one province to another province because of that rigid tradition, which will prevent all these things. And when I was studying, at the age of 40, I went to study Islamic, go to study Islamic studies and jurisprudence. And I actually went to learn what are my limits. And I learned my liberty. And I assure you that there are very few women in Afghanistan and countries like Afghanistan who would know exactly what that is. Mm-hmm. And this is the unfortunate situation.
I want to add that we 4 women that we are here, we are representing them. Of course, there is a blame to us that we are urban women, but the women that they are staying or living in the rural area, we don't know about their rights, but this is not true. Because, for example, my background, I have been a governor in the Bamyan province. I have been traveled in every part of Bamyan and some other provinces. So we have another woman that she is from the south, Sharifa Zurmati, from Zurmat Paktia, which is the east south of Afghanistan. She knows very well what's going on in the south part of Afghanistan. And for example, Fawzia Kufi, she is from the north, and she knows all the difficulties of women in Badakhshan and also in the north part of Afghanistan. So because we are here, it doesn't mean that we don't know their problem. But all the problem can be resolved if after the peace settlement or the political settlement can be occur in the right place, in the right time. So of course, gradually, these kind of problem can be resolved by the program or planning that after peace agreement can be done. Thank you.
We have a question from our own Zunaira John. Judging by the hurdles being faced in the peace talks recently, what do you see as the best case scenario coming out of these talks? Not just for the whole country, but also for Afghan women who could be potentially negatively impacted by an acceptance of the hardline Taliban interpretations of Islam and governance?
Maybe for people who started with such an enthusiasm, if you remember the day of the inauguration of the peace talks, I can never forget this very old couple with a little old television in front of them and watching the inauguration with awe and just looking and gazing and almost the nose inside the television. I never forget that how enthusiastic people were. Because of the peace processes everywhere in the world, it is a slow process. People are getting a little bit, tired. And of course, the most important thing is these target killings and these violence inside Afghanistan doesn't help and also make people lose their hearts. But we, as the negotiators, men and women, and especially women, we learned a lot and we taught a lot. Before starting the negotiations, we were seen in the eye of the other side of the table as tokens, that they have come to represent a new Afghanistan as a Western token, but not anymore. Now they converse with us, they talk with us, they argue with us, exactly the same way that they talk and argue with our male colleagues. And they see us totally, you can see it in their face, that they see us as mere politicians and negotiators, and nothing less than that. And we are the reality of Afghanistan. We have always been the reality of Afghanistan. But we should not take this for granted because we saw what happened. we saw that if 100 years ago, in 1921, the first group of women went for further education outside Afghanistan, but look at what happened afterwards. So we are very careful not to take things for granted. But here we taught a lot. And it is not just presence of women, the presence of seeing all these ethnic groups in our side of the table. And to see that we all represent the youth. And we gave time to our youth to talk and talk about their own experiences and their own ideas and what they see in the future. So all this was like a schooling for us and for them too.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that sums up one of the questions that was asked are the presence of 4 women merely symbolic? I think you've answered that question and you've answered it well. I would just like to, I may have missed someone, and Zunaira can jump in if she thinks that I may have missed the stream of questions. I feel I've covered everything by kind of clubbing some questions together. But my question is this, and then we'll wrap up, is that what can women in the region or progressive voices in the region, platforms in the region, particularly from Pakistan, what are some concrete suggestions you would like us to consider, where perhaps Zunaira can help us reconvene again to come together to take something forward? So whether it's written statements in support of constitutional guarantees of equality or other such things, because I sit on some of these platforms myself, and I would like to extend that offer of what we can actually do, how we can take this forward. If there's some written documents that you have that you can give us for us to consider and then come back together again. Thank you.
I like to jump to that question. I think taking this opportunity, I would say, like as earlier on, also Ms. GAILANI mentioned about how, let's say, we are privileged that some of our human rights activists and progressive groups in US and Western countries are already supporting us. You probably heard or learned about Senator Shaheen has made a big thing by bringing a group of the Congress, US Congress, who signed a letter in support of Afghan women and their rights in the negotiation and all that. I think what is very much important that none of, we also had one from French Parliament, for instance. We had statements for some MPs in Pakistan, in UK, but we had no single support statement or letter coming from, let's say, from women in Pakistan. I think that will make a huge difference if it come from a progressive Pakistani movement, and especially from women, that it's not acceptable for you, that's a very conservative regime which is anti-women or push back the women's right in Afghanistan is not acceptable, for instance, or you supporting the struggle of women inside Afghanistan. But above all, as an Islamic country, right now, every day, men, women, and children are killed, to the extent that infant children who are newly born, you probably know about the story of hospital being bombed, and women and during delivery and baby were just born, they were killed. Similarly, right now, women are targeted, also journalists are targeted, and communities are targeted. If there is one statement as a sheer thing, which is Islam among us, not that Islam which is putting women inside the house and men in the scene, but there is equality. The first equality came from Islam. And today, I don't know what Islam these groups are representing by killing men and women and children. I think we need those kind of statements media sort of campaign that come from our neighbor, and that will make a lot of difference, because although people in Afghanistan very much make difference between Pakistani public because of all the time that Afghans have spent in Pakistan, for all the good relation that we have developed. I personally went to school in Pakistan, I went to college in Pakistan, and that makes Pakistan my second home. People make that difference between politics in Pakistan, the military, ISI, and general public. But a statement will clarify and bring that we are not alone. We have our civil society and women movement in Pakistan who are behind us,
Thank
or
you.
who are supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Dr. HABIBA SARABI, I think you were about to say something also. What I'd just like to add to that, my question is how think tanks can also help. So women's movements and groups, definitely, but also think tanks like the Institute of Regional Studies, how we can help this process and women within the process.
Sure. The think tank also is playing a big role. I want to share my idea that how you can help us. That especially Pakistani sister, you are very, very important to have a strong voice. Because this voice is coming from Pakistan, because there are so many Taliban home in Pakistan, or get training in Pakistan, or military wise, or getting support from Pakistan. If you as a sisterhood voice can have a strong voice, it can help a lot. As the other women in the region, or especially Western country, European and US, we have some opted from and also a strong voice and a strong statement from these women. If we have from your side, it can be very, very important and useful. And that, beside that, it will be, it should be a kind of building a network between the sister in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, even in India. So it can help a lot, and it will be bring a kind of consensus among the women that they are in the region. And this network and this platform can work even to avoid extremism in this area. And extremism and terrorism, both of them work side by side, and it will damage all the our life, not only in Afghanistan, but in Pakistan as well. So we can avoid extremism and terrorism by our strong network and by our strong effort. Thank you.
Benazir, it's extremely important that the think tanks, they should put forward ideas and suggestions, and even form some sort of pressure on the governments. And I'm not talking just about Pakistan, I'm talking about the whole region. But Pakistan, as Dr. Sarabi said, it has a totally different weight for us, because Iran and Pakistan host so many of our people. So especially in Pakistan, women have played such an important role as the leader of the country, as important ministers in the parliament, in the civil society. But you have been so silent till now. From the beginning of our peace talks, this is the first time that I'm really happy that at last we have you with us. But you can put it very openly to your government that when you talk with Taliban, when you receive Taliban officially, you should have women in the Pakistani government delegation to show that this is part of Pakistan. And it is important that the civil society and think tanks, that they write and put or publish things which can help, not just vague ideas, but practical steps that Pakistan can help people of Afghanistan, especially women. And Pakistan will know the question of the minorities, the question of multi-ethnic country. and they should put it forward because Pakistan has a huge experience with that. And think tanks could play a very good role. I think you should, in the think tanks, they should have, like in America, like in Britain, like in France, that now, because of the peace talks, they have a special now office for talking about this matter, talking with Afghans and all that. I think we can expect this from our neighboring country, which hosts millions of Afghans, really. That helped us so much during the war, but to help us also to go to a permanent and safe and fair peace, inshallah.
Thank you, wonderful. I'm sure all of us will take these ideas to our forums and platforms, and we will come back to you to take this forward. I think this is only the beginning. Thank you so much for such an enlightening talk, for actually enlightening us. And actually, I feel quite embarrassed that we have been silent. You're right. I think because being so close, we've not understood the conflict in the same way. We don't see it always in the same lens. We're fed things that are not true almost. We are caught up in our own extremists, politics, of our own lack of democracy, of our own fighting for our own platforms, that we forget that actually you have to extend your hand, and how important it is to have regional peace and peace within and democracy within the region. So thank you. I would personally like to thank HABIBA John, Fatma John, and Palwasha John for taking the time out. I know you're very busy, and giving us this time, your knowledge and your wisdom, and sharing your passion for peace. Actually, you've been inspirational. I think I speak for myself, but I'm sure for everyone here. If Zunaira would like to sum up, I think that would be, as she's brought everyone together, she should have the last word. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benazir. I don't think that we need to add anything further to what has been said, because I think that all our distinguished and esteemed speakers have really covered so many aspects that probably we weren't aware of, weren't thinking of, or had not even considered. So I just want to personally thank everyone, specifically our speakers and our moderator, for joining us today and making this such an insightful discussion. I know, especially to my speakers, I know how busy you were and how much effort it took for you to get this time out and join us and share your thoughts and ideas with us. And I feel that it's given us a whole other outlook on how to go forward from here, how to help spread this message, or to kind of enforce this idea that, not just the role of women, but also minorities, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, every person needs to be involved in a peace talk to make it successful. And that's something that we can take away from here, and how we can help out in that process, and how we can facilitate it within, because as we all believe that there cannot be peace in the region unless there's peace in every country. And that's something that we hold really dear, that our neighbors have to be in peace, successful, doing well for in order for the region to actually flourish. So I just want to thank everyone, and thank you so much for being a part of this today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, and Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.